Hey guys, how you doing? It's Marshall from the Combat Hour. Just wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that I think is interesting. We might not answer the question, we might even present more questions, but the question is, how good is Manny Pacquiao? And I don't know, man. The man is a sensation. He defies age, size, everything, man. He's beaten guys that people thought he couldn't beat. He went to weight classes people thought he shouldn't have gone up to. But let's just go over his career a little bit. So he turned pro in January 1995. So that makes him 15 years old at that time. Yep, professional fighter, 15 years old. Rattles off 10 or 15 victories, and then he fights Rustico Torrecampo. Not a very touted guy. They never had a rematch, but Pacquiao did lose this fight. And I mean, there's no shame in that. At the time, Pacquiao was 16 years old, and he was fighting a dude 6 years older than him. So he's fighting a 22-year-old at 16 years old. Just picture that. Put yourself in his shoes. That's ridiculous. You're in your mid-teens, not even, you could still be going through puberty at the time, and he's fighting a guy who is past the age of 20. I just think it's ridiculous. And good for Pacquiao, man. Just a different breed, different animal altogether. Rattles off a bunch more wins. And then when he was 20 years old, he had his next loss. This was a world title fight against Boonsai Sangersat. So Boonsai, I think he had a combined record of 74-6 or something. So not an easy opponent, not a light guy, a real guy that was just a tough opponent. At the time, he was undefeated. They never rematched because Pacquiao kept going up in weight. But yeah, it would have been nice if he got that one back, but he did not. And then he rattled off a bunch more wins, and that brings us to 2001. He was taking on Leho Ledwaba for the International Boxing Federation Super Bantamweight title. At this point, Freddie Roach started working with Manny Pacquiao. Leading up to this fight, this was the first fight they worked together, so 2001. It's 2020 today. They've been working together for almost 20 years. Before Freddie was working with him, Pacquiao was very raw. He was very raw while they were working together as well, and you saw that leading up to the Eric Morales fight. They worked together for a few years, and then they took on Eric Morales in March of 2005, so they're together for about 3.5 years at this point. And Eric Morales exposed that. We saw he was just like a left-handed fighter. He didn't have much of a jab. He didn't do a lot of body work. And he didn't have that right hook to come behind the straight left in his southpaw stance. Eric Morales exposed that. But Freddie Roach always said that the fundamentals were there. He had the athleticism, the footwork. You could see it was raw, but he had the fast feet and those huge calves to have tremendous footwork. He had to work on the technical aspect of it and really get those patterns down. He had to train that right hand a lot, how to use it. He's never been a great jabber, but his jab has definitely improved since his early days. The right hook is there. I'm pretty sure it's the shot that he dropped Thurman with. I could be wrong on that. Check me, but I believe it is the shot that he dropped Thurman with. But anyways, he loses that fight to Eric Morales, and people started to write him off. They're saying, wow, he's a hype job. He's not going to be what we thought he was going to be. He's very one-dimensional, a technical boxer, a technically superior fighter like Eric Morales is going to beat him every time. Yeah, at that point, I agree with that. But then in January 2006, they rematch, and Pacquiao TKOs him in the rematch. Then in November of 2006, they have the rubber match, the trilogy fight, and he KOs him. So we go from unanimous decision loss, TKO victory, KO victory in just over a year. So you see the progression. He saw what was wrong. Him and Freddie went to the drawing board. They fixed it. And right about that time is when Manny Pacquiao that's the Manny Pacquiao we all know and love. After the Morales trilogy, he beats George Solis. He has a second fight with Marco Antonio Barrera and a second fight with Juan Manuel Marquez. So to mention, he fought Marquez for the first time in 2004 to a draw. In my opinion, Marquez won the fight. Pacquiao almost knocked him out in the first round. I believe he dropped him 3 times. Marquez fought that all the way back to a draw. I think he won every round except for the first round and the second round, if I remember correctly. I have to rewatch it, but I think Marquez got screwed. It is tough to see a as a judge to be like, yeah, this guy got dropped 3 times in a round. You kind of mentally could mess with you, but it's the 10-point must system. Every round's a new round. I do think he won the fight. You guys let me know. But anyways, they fought to a draw. The rematch, they fought to a split decision, and that was in 2008. He goes on after the second Marquez fight to fight David Diaz, Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Josh Clottey. Goes up to 154, junior middleweight, takes on Antonio Margarito to become 8-division world champion, boxing's only ever 8-division world champion. Then he comes back down in weight, takes on Shane Mosley, and then has the trilogy fight in 2011 with Juan Manuel Marquez. In this fight, Pacquiao wins by majority decision. So we have a draw, a split decision, a majority decision. What are we seeing here? Marquez is tough. He's making it hard for Pacquiao. None of these fights were easy. All very highly combated both ways, and might have even been able to score both ways. That being, as you see, Marquez is very consistent in Pacquiao's career. He's the guy that kind of had his number the whole time. After the third Marquez fight, he goes on and fights Timothy Bradley. Timothy Bradley wins a highly questionable split decision. In my opinion, I thought it was clear. I thought he won. I thought Bradley got the nod. I'm in the minority. Most people don't think Bradley won that fight. But you guys tell me what you think. Who won that fight? I think Bradley definitely deserved to get the nod in that. It was a close fight, hard-fought fight, but I thought Bradley won that, did enough to win it. After that, they do a fourth fight with Juan Manuel Marquez. Yes, a fourth fight. In this is the very historic, the one people remember, where Pacquiao gets knocked out cold about midway through the fight. Marquez got his justice for those 3 controversial ones leading up to it. So we have a draw, a split decision, majority decision, KO loss for Pacquiao. And they never fought again. Marquez said, well, I don't know. We don't need to. You have 2 wins and there's a draw, and I have 1 win, but my 1 win is better than everything else you've done. I kind of see what you're saying. It would have been nice to see a 5th fight because there was 2 1-1, but good for Marquez. He said, I'm taking this out of the judge's hand, and just knocked him out. So at this point, people think Pacquiao's done. He had just lost to Tim Bradley, and he'd lost to Marquez 2 fights in a row. And the Marquez fight, people thought, wow, it's over. Like, that's it. Pacquiao's best days are behind him. But again, we're in 2020, and Pacquiao is a reigning welterweight champion, and it's just ridiculous. 8 years later. So after the Marquez fight, he has to rebuild himself, because people are like, we're trying to see the Mayweather fight this time. But Mayweather didn't want to fight him. He said there was no reason to fight a guy that just got knocked out. I understand what he's saying, but it still would have sold, but it wouldn't have sold the way it would have before the Timothy Bradley or Marquez losses. So after the Marquez defeat, he goes on to fight Brandon Rios, fights Tim Bradley again, gets the nod this time. Undefeated champion at the time, Chris Algieri, and then we get the Floyd Mayweather fight. So this was billed as the biggest fight of all time. At the time, it definitely was. Didn't live up to the hype. What happened was basically Floyd outboxed him for 12 rounds. Manny had his moments. After the fight, people were coming out saying Pacquiao had a torn rotator cuff. Did he? I don't know. Maybe he didn't. There was pictures circulating of Manny in the hospital. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. At this time, I don't think he ever would have beat Floyd. I don't know if there ever was a time he would have beat Floyd prior to this. But I've always thought Floyd had his number. I just think stylistically it's a tough fight for Pacquiao. But anyways, Floyd gets the job done. So that brings us to another Pacquiao loss. And following that defeat, he fought Tim Bradley in the trilogy fight for the vacant WBO title, because Floyd vacated the title he just won off Pacquiao because he didn't want to pay the sanctioning fees. So Pacquiao in 2016 becomes WBO welterweight champion. Then he fights Jesse Vargas. And then he goes down to Australia to take on Jeff Horn, who was undefeated at the time as well, and loses a very controversial unanimous decision. The fact that it was unanimous is just ridiculous. I don't know how none of the judges gave it to Pacquiao. You guys watch that fight. You tell me what you think. Pacquiao didn't look great. He did not. But he almost stopped Horn in 1 round. He didn't drop him, but he had him battered around the ring, shaky, stumbling. The ref came to his corner after and said, you got to show me something in the next round, or I got to stop the fight. Teddy Atlas was upset with the decision. I was upset with the decision. I think Pacquiao could have fought better, but he did enough to win. That being said, he didn't look like the Pacquiao of old, and people were saying, well, this might be the end. He lost to a unknown quantity in Jeff Horn. What's next? So he takes some time off, about a year, and then he comes back and fights Lucas Matisse. Looked great, TKO victory. Then in 2019, takes on Adrian Broner, and then has possibly the biggest win of his career, beating Keith Thurman. Not because Keith was the best opponent he's ever beaten, but because he was 40 years old at the time. He was the betting underdog until days leading up to the fight. And it was just a tough fight. Keith's not a small welterweight. Pacquiao taking time off. And Pacquiao gets it done. Pacquiao won the fight. So we're now in 2020. And Pacquiao is a reigning welterweight champion, along with Errol Spence, who has the WBC and IBF, and Terrence Crawford, who has the WBO. So I'm just going to ask you guys, how good is Manny Pacquiao, the 8-division world champion, who's beat 22 world champions, and the combined record of the people that he's lost to is 300 wins with only 34 defeats in 7 losses? That is ridiculous. You guys tell me, how good is Manny Pacquiao?